And the word Ifa means to scratch or to mark. And basically what that means, esoterically, it means to go beneath the surface of things. Okay, so Ifa is a tradition that is considered to be one of the, what we'd say the higher oracles in Africa, because interesting thing about Africa is that there's a lot of very interesting migration patterns, and the inhabitants of Nigeria, who we call the Yoruba actually migrated out of Egypt, original name Kemet. Okay, and they developed a corpus of wisdom. They developed a corpus of information known as Ifa or Odu. The word or Odu means womb. Okay, Odu means womb. And the highest entity in the Ifa system, or like God, his name is Olodumare. Olodumare. Now, Olodumare, what the name actually means is O means owner. Anytime you see O in Nigeria or Ghana or the Akan tradition, it means the same thing every time. So you'll know it, little language lesson. O always means the owner of or the spirit of. In this tradition in West Africa, there's no such thing as a thing. There's no word for thing like we have here. The closest word that we have to thing is ohun. And ohun means two things. It means to listen, and it means force. So everything, and I gotta say thing because that's our word. Everything is actually a force. Okay? So we may say something like there's a deity or archetype that we know as Oshun. Okay? And the name Oshun means the spirit of the source. Okay, she's a love deity. She would correlate with Venus, Aphrodite, Diana, Mary Magdalene, Het Heru, and there's many others. Medusa, even, who was a love archetype. Okay, and what that means, being the spirit of the owner of the source, it connects itself to the menses. Okay, the menses is said to be the source of the flow or of the congregative force, things that bring things together. Oshun is a nationalist. We have more chairs. Okay, he's like, I don't want to sit next to you. So, you're yelling. So, so this congregative force and all these different forces, they have a name which we call Orisha. Now here in America, we know angels, right? And before we were given this name, angels, which was perverted from its original pronunciation and spelling. Does anybody know what that was? Okay, angels was originally angel. It was changed. Okay, so if one was to say this is an angel of God, the original connotation was this is an angle of God. Okay, so if this is an angle of God, this is a pathway to get to the Almighty, or to what we call Source. All right? Yes, sir.
When you're saying angle, you're really talking about the geometric figure of a triangle, or an angle.
Yes, but I'm speaking about a path to an angle. If let's say if you're the source, I can come from this angle, that angle, that angle, and the assimilation and the equation of different angles creates formulas. So in this tradition, sometimes they'll say things like, we have another archetype called Yemoja. In Latin countries, they call it Yemonya. And it's only because they don't pronounce the J's. Okay? But her original name was Yemoja, which is short for Yeye Omo Eja. Yeye means mother. Omo means child. Eja means fish. Okay, so this relates itself to our astrological sign of Pisces, or the Vesica Pisces, and the ability for women to actually produce children on their own, to produce their own seed. Okay, but Yeye Omo Eja, or shortened Yemoja, the Great Mother, who we also know as Mother Mary, we also know as the goddess Isis, we also know as Gaia, we also know as Durga. and the list goes on and on and on and on, right? She was always said, never put Yemoja together with Ogun on your altar, because it will bring bad luck into your life. Ogun is the owner or the spirit of vitality. He's represented by warfare and militancy, and more important, the element of acid. Ogun, it's said that he carries 2 machetes, and he walks through the woods with a cigar, carving paths with 2 machetes. What this represents is the acidic forces of nature that go out and chart new paths, new angles, figures out new things. Ogun is also called the God killer. There was a time, he looked up when I said that. I'm not going to use that word anymore. Young man was like this whole time. I said, so, but what that represents, when we use God killer, it means that there's a time when we have to, because we're like infants in our awareness and our consciousness, there's a time when we have to pray to the angels to watch over us, to make sure that our thought streams, our streams of cognition are civilized. And then there comes a time when the angels say, okay, you're an adult now, what do you want us to do? Your wish is my command. Okay? So when you once had a God and you allowed something to lord over you, Ogun is the force that is inside of your body, represented by your heart chakra. Right? Because the heart chakra is the middle chakra. Everything beneath that pretty much deals with your emotions, your desires, your lower order thinking, your lower vibration. And then everything above the heart chakra deals with things that are more metaphysical and more esoteric. So at that heart chakra is where you make the decision, where you say, okay, do I really want to be a part of this conscious community? Because everyone's saying I'm crazy. And the walls of my reality are crumbling. The things that I used to do that used to work for me don't work anymore. Okay, even if I go into a place and I'm dressed and I'm walking and talking like everyone, someone still comes to me and says, hey, there's something different about you. I still stick out. Now at that heart chakra, which deals with our inner truths, unconditional truths, our objective truths, we make the decision, do we want to go higher and become the self-guru, self-governing. There was a phrase in Egypt, or Kemet, where again the Yoruba migrated from. It was a story that spoke about Heru, who you might know as Horus. He's the hawk, okay? Here, we call him Jesus. We also knew him as Thor, and we also knew him as Krishna. We also knew him as Buddha. He's the gatekeeper, the redeemer of his father, who was Osiris. But there's a story that speaks about, and it says, when Heru was a baby, the Neteru took care of Heru. Neteru are like our angels, like how we got Orisha, Neteru, Lawal, guardian spirits. In Egypt, they called them the Netir or the Neteru, where we get the word nature. It comes from that term. We also get the word nurture from that term as well. Well, it was said that when Heru was a baby, the Neteru would look after him. But when Heru became a man, he commanded the Neteru. Okay? So what that speaks about is the maturation of our spiritual walk. How we come to a place where we can no longer look for something to guide every step of our path, because our vibration and consciousness is raised to the point where we have to be accountable for our own movements. And those entities were designed by us, those gods were designed by us to perform that function. They're stair steps, just like your chakras. We love our chakras, right? We love to make them spin and to make them glow and this and that. But we never see them as a prison. Right? Because they're so beautiful, right? They even are responsible for all the UFO sightings. Because a lot of times my students, sometimes they'll call and they'll say, oh, I was walking and this UFO kept following me. And I'll have to say, why would a UFO want to follow you? You're not even doing anything. You're not doing anything interesting. Why would a UFO want to follow you? what they don't, and most of the time I'll say, when did it happen? I was doing this meditation, and then I left the temple and I was walking home. Well, what happened, you were meditating and you raised the vibration of that house so much that it projected outwards. Because the UFO will always look like a wheel, and it will always have a color. That's you looking at your own chakra projection, because you added so much what we call in this tradition ashe, or power, that it was able to project out. Okay? So those chakras, the reason why they serve as what we would call prisons is because they work on polarities. Right? Is everyone here familiar with the chakras? Okay, so let's say for instance we're dealing with the solar chakra, right? Which represents what? Anyone? It's a will, right? But what is that? Yeah, it's that fiery force that causes us to project our identity into the world. That solar chakra is the one that says, you're the one, right? Because we live in a heliocentric solar system where the sun is at the center saying, I am the one. So we think is one sun, but that's the fake sun. There's the one behind it, the black hole, who in Egypt we call that Amun, where you get the term amen after you say a prayer, represented the unseen aspects of God, which was more powerful than Ra. We had Ra, which was signified by a circle with a dot in the middle of it. Now what that represented was your middle point. Okay? Don't go crazy with the polarities. I don't always want to be greeted with light and love, light and love, light and love. I just want to give light to everyone. Well, we understood in Nigeria, if I take a flashlight and I shine it in your face, what happens?
Turn away.
She turns away, or if she looks into it, she can't see anything, she's blinded, right? If I put you in a completely dark room, what happens? Can't see anything. So, if I give you light all the time, I blind you. If I give you darkness all the time, I blind you. So Ra said, hey, here's a trick. Find the middle point, the gray area, where you're not at yin, you're not at yang, you're not at love, you're not at hate, you're not at Jesus, you're not at Lucifer. You're not on, my body was born in Aquarius. You're not in Aquarius, or on the other side, a Leo. Here's the trick. Go through the middle of the circle. Become the 13th apostle after you master the 12 disciplines. They just called them disciples, but they were disciplines. Master those 12 disciplines, or the 12 zodiac, and go through the center and be the 13th. Okay? Now, we had an entity that represented that in Nigeria called Eshu. We also call him here Legba. Sometimes you hear songs like old blues singer, and they say, I made a deal with the devil at the crossroads. All right? Robert Johnson had a song like that called Crossroads Blues, and Eric Clapton covered it. Right? Now, Ilegba was his original name, which was a shortened form of Eshu Ilegbara, meaning person of great power who launches forth. Eshu means to launch forth. Ilegbara means great power. Okay? But Eshu, if we took a J and put it in the front of it and the S at the back, what would we get? Okay, you guys just figured that one out. Spelling wasn't my strong point. So, we got Jesus, right? Represented by the cross. And no one can come unto the Father unless they go through him. Well, interesting enough, Eshu is the entity or Elegba that we invoke whenever we do any ritual, because we can't reach the other entities unless we go through Eshu first. Now we're talking about a science and a culture that dates back before Atlantis, before Lemuria. Okay? Anybody know about Atlantis? I bet you do. You look like an Atlantean type of person. Okay? You know about Atlantis. Okay, what was Atlantis?
Actually,
sunken city, right? It sunk down into the ocean.
City built out of stone or gold, though. Wasn't it still that city built on like a certain standard of gold?
Right, and it went down. Right. Now, we definitely know though, we know all about Atlantis, we know the stories, but because we're here at a metaphysical fair like this and we're vibrating at a frequency that's a little bit above and faster than the norm, Atlantis represented when the world was functioning from first eye reality, which is the Son of Man. When they asked Christ, they said, who should we say performed this miracle? Did he say, Jesus? Couldn't have, because there's no J's in the Hebrew language, so we know that wasn't his name anyway. We knew that. He said, tell them the Son of Man performed this. Right? But then it got confusing to us. I know it did, because then we read about Solomon. And we found out that his name means Sol Oman, Son of Man. Right? And then we were upset about that. We got a little upset because we said it sounded like talking about the same person. Right? Then we found out about Solomon, how he commanded the jinn. The jinn were the entities that were made of smokeless fire. Like plasma, right? But then we said, wait a minute. Isn't the son of this universe smokeless fire? We said that. I know you did. See, I see it in the eyes. Okay. So we understood that Solomon used his ring, which was the symbol, which we know was the Star of Dawood, right, or the Star of David. And what did that look like? You might know it's 5 points, right? But the original one was
525 is the winning number.
6 points. This pyramid. Why? As above, so below. That was carved on Ramses' temple in Kemet, or Egypt. And you know what was right underneath that inscription? Old man, know thyself, because in doing this, ye shall know God. Why old man? Because of the O? Old? That's in Nigeria, yeah, when it's just the letter O. But it said old man. Old is a sign of wisdom. Is God old? Yeah, I am, whatever. Whatever it feels like being. And of course, when we say God, we know that God does not connote gender. So God means male and female. And when we say man, we know that we're talking about mem, alf, nun, woman, man, child, right? We knew that. Okay, so the thing is, when they said, old man, know thyself, they were speaking to you, humans, because you're the only thing that gets old. Because the older you get, the worse you get. I'm just saying. I first started my school. I have a school where I teach spirituality. I started with children. That's how I started. And I loved it. But then all the parents wanted to start coming. And it felt like a job. Why? Because I say, hey, you know, you can astral travel, and you do it every night when you dream. You go into the astral realms. No, I don't remember my dreams. But the children say, really? Oh, tonight I'm going to go to a crystal city. See, it's just that easy. You see? The only adults that are fun to work with are the ones who are autistic. They're the greatest. Because autistic people are self-actualizing. Anybody ever notice that? If an autistic person tells you, one day they say, today my name is Joey, and you call them anything but Joey, they're not answering. They'll remember to midnight. Joey. You see? Self-actualizing. I am. Somebody say God is I am, right? I am whatever my divine breath brings into existence. Okay? So the problem with saying, old man, know thyself, because in knowing thyself you shall know God, is saying that you're the only thing in the spiritual ecosystem. There's a chair up here if you need one. That's it. And he's right here, and there's a chair. I don't know if you're looking for it. You're the only thing in the spiritual ecosystem that is actually aging, because God is a child. God is a baby. And how do we know that? Because every time God comes back to the planet, God comes back as a baby. Now in our culture, we do have instances of different archetypes that were always old. Odin, Zeus, and in this tradition, Obatala and Osiris. They came through old and grown. Why? Because they represented the sensitivity, the spiritual sensitivity of nature. Because an older person may not want to eat buffalo wings. Right? They're too hot. I don't eat all that hot stuff. My grandfather, you can't give him that. It burns coming out. Don't give me that. That's his thing he always says. Don't give me that. It's going to burn, it comes out. Why am I going to eat that? What are you going to put that on my plate for? So it's that sensitivity that we develop over time to the spiritual world that we don't have when we're younger, because we're so egotistical, and that egoic pursuit, that egoic thought is what ages us. That's what actually makes us old. And God is saying, I'm a baby. And every time I come here with a spirit of wonderment. And we lose that. We lose that wonderment over time because we start to develop what's called a personality. It's the worst thing. The worst thing going to personality second is family. Hey, I'm sorry, I know. She'll explain later. Because when you start coming into your awareness, the first person to tell you that you're crazy is your family. Other people are like, okay, well, hey, listen, you do what you do and I do what I do, and let's go have a drink. Your family is like, you weren't raised that way, okay? But as you age, you also have this same investment in personality. I say, hey, you can do this. Well, I'm a Cancer, and Cancers are like this. I'm a Pisces, I'm gonna cry every 3 minutes for nothing. I'm a Cancer, I'm gonna bring everything in my shell to process it. I'm not going out there with it. You see? You see your trap? Okay? Because, let's say, what was that movie? West Side Story, right? It was the Sharks and the Jets, right? Okay, I'm a shark, you're a jet, okay? But as a jet, maybe he has something that will help me to self-actualize beyond the polarity of my chakras, beyond the servitude of the angels, that will finally let me to identify myself as the supreme being. But I can't get it because he's a jet, and I gotta be loyal to the sharks. You see the problem there? That's why, even though I run a school and I have a spiritual order, my first advice is to all my students is, don't join anything. Joining up is for suckers. Don't do it. Because the moment you join something, now it excludes you from the other information that you may actually need to actualize. Because I don't necessarily know what you need uniquely. I'm sure some of, especially the women, are really into it. Crystals work really well for them. They wear them, they feel them, they vibe, or maybe even a little berry, a little herb. Oh, whenever I hold this herb, I feel this. For some of us, we feel nothing. Nothing. In this tradition, one of the things that we do is ritual and sacrifice. Does anybody know the difference between a ritual and a sacrifice? When you kill somebody, you talk to him. Okay. Yeah, it could be that.
A sacrifice is like more something you're sacrificing. A ritual is something you're like celebrating or worshiping, right?
It could be. Could be. He was actually closer though. But killing, you said something, but you don't want to say it out loud. Say it again. Giving somebody up. That's sacrifice. Was that sacrifice, or did I give you the answer? You look to the side. That's not what. Okay, but yeah, we'll take it. We'll take it. Well, the judges take it. Judges take it. Sacrifice. He said, giving something up. Because when you sacrifice something, you make it sacred, meaning it no longer serves use and purpose for your human intellect, your human purposes. Like this bag, I can sacrifice. I don't have to kill it. Okay? But I can kill its purpose and relationship that it has with you, which is a contract. You agree this is a bag. We all agree, right? I can kill that relationship. That's my job as a priest. As a priest, I was trained to kill relationships. And what that basically means is when I'm sacrificing something and I'm making it sacred, I'm sending it to what we call Orun. You guys call it heaven. Some of you call it the fifth dimension. Some of you call it the underworld. Because in traditional teaching, the underworld and heaven were the same place. Then later they told us it was hell and stuff. But no. Hell is freezing. Hell is not hot. You guys know that, right? Hell is when you're deaf, dumb, and blind. You're frozen in your ways of action. That's hell. Okay? Which you can experience here. Ever had someone who's just doing something, we call it insanity. They're doing something, you're trying to tell them, and they're like, listen, I don't know and I don't want to know. Right? Can't hear the truth. You start explaining it, they're like, this just sounds crazy. I don't know, I'm not listening. Can't understand the truth. So then you say, you know what? I'll be the example. I'll show you. And they just won't look at it. They can't see the vibration. That's hell. Okay? So hell is not hot. Hell is freezing. Okay? This is why one of the most hellish things that can happen to a young man, especially in certain places, is when polar ice tells him to freeze and he has to now face just ice. You know what I mean? You know. Police tell him to freeze. Because that's service. They're servicing him, serving ice. And now he has to face, or she, just ice. That's one of the scariest things that can happen, right? And it's usually served by who? Officer, who offers ice, right? These words are for a reason, because when you're arrested, they put a stop. That means to put a stop to something. That was the science of Medusa. What did it mean to be turned to stone? I can't transform now. That's the worst thing that can happen. I can't go beyond my form, which is a prison. How do you trap a god?
Freeze them. Freeze them.
Freeze them? What else? How do you trap a god, young man? If it's God, how do you trap a god? I know you watch cartoons, you see stuff like this, huh? What about you?
I watch cartoons, but I don't know.
Okay, that's all I watch.
Call Acme.
Huh?
Call Acme.
Call Acme. Okay. Or make it human. It's the only way you can trap a god, is to make it human. There was an excellent movie about this years ago called The Last Unicorn. Anybody remember that? In the 80s, Last Unicorn, excellent movie. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. If you watched it, go watch it again. Okay? Unicorn, right? Uni. And where did it have the horn? Right here? Right? Corn. Well, why is it corn? If it's a horn, why isn't it a unicorn? Okay, Osiris, the archetype in Egypt, he was called the corn deity. Because Osiris is also where we get the word iris. Like eye. It's also where we get Irish. It comes from the term Osiris. Okay? And it was said that the pineal, it's a relation to the pineal organ, or the first eye, which is said to be the size of a grain of corn, shaped like a pine cone. Okay? It's also where we get the name for the archetype Pan. Okay? Pineal. So, when you're functioning from that reality, and you figured out that this is the Son of Man, and that when you're functioning from this reality, you've now been caught up in the rapture, because Jesus has now come through the clouds. Because what are the clouds? Anybody ever seen a picture of a brain?
What a brain.
You've seen a brain. Left and right sides, right? Those are the clouds. So when it talked about in the Bible that when the Son of Man returns and he comes through the clouds and all will see. Now, of course, when you read that, you said, wait a minute, what if I'm in the basement? I won't see that. Right? I know you said it. I said it. It didn't make sense. I said, what if I'm an astronaut? Like I'm going to see him flying through space. Oh, man, why am I up here on the moon? Now I'm stuck. No, everybody's rapture is individual because everyone has a pineal organ. And when that comes online, it now becomes your guiding force, not your flesh brain, which associates you with what? Your personality, your humanity, your attachments. You see? This was the signs of Osiris and the signs of the unicorn. That's what the unicorn represented. That is what Atlantis represented. Atlantis was a time when the pineal went down into the darkness of the water. Darkness of deep water represents subconscious ignorance.
To pull your ticket out.
Whenever you see that in mythology, water or deep water, it represents the subconscious mind. So Atlantis, what it represented was that first eye. It was that age of ignorance, the Kali Yuga, the first Kali Yuga age that man went through. Remember, man is woman, man, child, Mem Alpha. And when it came down into that ignorance of the dark waters, right, the world went into a stupor. They told us this in the Bible. It was the Luciferian story, right? This was the angel who wasn't supposed to have any will, because angels, archetypes, Orisha don't have will. But he said, I will soar above your throne. What he said is, God, you're perfect. We all know that, right? That's a problem. Because perfection is not biodegradable. Perfection does not change. Perfection is death. Adam and Eve were trapped in death. They were perfect. So Lucifer said, listen, we got to do better, God. It's boring. It's boring up here. Okay? We're not doing it. We're doing the same thing every day, and we don't know how smart we are. Because when you're fully extended, you can't see the full operation of yourself. This is perfection. So what God did, said, okay, no problem. I'll negate from myself. And I'll create what's called man. Man is a negation of God. Okay? But Lucifer, in order for him to now become better than God, God said, okay, I got to handicap him. That's just how, that's the rules. Okay? I got a couple of blank stares on that one. All right, let's try it right here. Anybody here play sport? A sport. Tennis. Okay, let's just say if we could, I know it's impossible, but let's just say that you were the best tennis player in the universe. No one's better. No one can come close to you, right? You were the best you could possibly be in 30 lifetimes. How can we make you better? Handicap. Break his arm. Break his... Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It's a violent crowd, so I was a little nervous for myself when I couldn't. There we go. So let's say we tie one of his hands behind his back, or we tie his feet together, and then say, now go be the best. So that's why man is a negation of God in God's pursuit to perfect itself. Not become perfect, because God knows perfection is death. But to perfect, it's a perfecting work. And in order to perfect yourself, you have to fall into the corruption of humanity. You have to become corrupt. That is where your perfection comes from, because your corruption represents your dark energy. So when Lucifer fell, that was light. Lucifer means light, the light bearer, right? Your soul is what? Light. Falling into the darkness of what? The earth, right? What just happened? Okay. Your body. This was the dark prison that God was trapped in, so that God could become more perfect. Why does one of the reasons God wants to become more perfect is because God does not have an empathetic link with man. Okay? There's no empathetic link. You go up in the middle of the night to get a drink of water. You stub your foot on the edge of your bed. You pray to God for the pain to stop. Why does it not stop? Because,
God don't care.
God, first of all, he doesn't care, right? Good point. He's indifferent. It's indifferent. But it doesn't have a toe. It never had a bed that it stubbed itself on. It doesn't know what you're talking about because it is looking at your soul and saying, everything looks fine to me. What's the problem? My toe. I don't have a toe. I'm a spiritual energy matrix. Never had a toe. So I gotta come down there now and get a toe. And I gotta stub it. Then I gotta live 60 more years and bring that information back up to the 5th dimension. So next time when they pray, oh yeah, I remember when that happened. Right, yeah, that's right. Okay. That's what the toe is. You see? Now, all these people in this room right here represent the multiple questions that God had of itself. What you call it though is not the questions, you call it your life purpose. That's what you call it. And you call your corruption your drama. Okay? But it's necessary. You have to be corrupted because if you came down in your perfect form, you basically would have came down as a spiritual corpse. Through your fluctuation of polarities between light and dark, between your ecstasy, that's where your light is. And ecstasy does what? No, you know what, it's children. Ecstasy enlightens you. You only become enlightened through your activities of ecstasy. Your corruption transforms you. Life is a process of ecstasy, corruption. And between ecstasy and corruption, or light and dark, or enlightenment and transformation, you give rise to a perfecting God, which is what you all are, if you're balanced. That's why I said, I won't greet you with light and love. Light and love. Oh, the energy is, oh, light and love. No, I'm ruining you. There are some things you're allowed to hate, even when you become conscious. Because hate is what? Separation. You don't want to be attached to everything. That's fair. You can say love is the congregative force of the cosmos. It's dark matter. You know that matter that keeps everything held together? They're trying to figure out why is it keeping everything held together. They can't figure it out yet. It's dark matter. In Nigeria, we called it Oshun. She was a love goddess. She represented consummation. Okay? But now today, because we've fallen into such a stupor, because Atlantis, remember, Atlantis fell into the dark waters. So that means we're not functioning from the first eye anymore. When Atlantis fell, it fell into the darkness of our subconscious mind. If no one here has seen the movie Inception, you should see it. It will help you with this concept. Okay? Going into the dark recesses of the subconscious mind. When your first eye, your pineal organ, Pan, Solomon, Son of Man, Jesus, Krishna, Shango, Heru, Horus, Osiris, I mean we can keep going on. When they fell into the darkness of the subconscious to rise again, one step higher. Okay? So the darkness is your friend because that's where the real power is. That's why in Nigeria we call our supreme being Olodumare. O means what? Owner, good. Odu means, anybody remember? Kind of, that was Yemo job, but at least you got something though. Odu means womb. Mare means serpent. Serpent. It was one of the original names for this land. Everybody thinks this land was named after Amerigo Vespucci. It wasn't. The original name of this land was Amare, where you get America. Amare means shining serpent. Now, Olodumare, our supreme being, which is us, in this tradition, his name means the owner of the serpent's womb. What the heck could that mean? Right, there we go. He was birthed to what? He owns the owner of the serpent's womb. But what does the serpent represent in our mythology? Satan. Well, no, the serpent and Satan are two different people. Satan is your brain, because Satan is what is the god of materialism. The only thing that keeps you attached to this material reality are your human thoughts. That's Satan. Okay? Satan is your brain, always in war with the Son of Man, who's Christ. They're always fighting each other. but eventually light wins over darkness, and we know how the story goes. Eventually, this one's going to win. Okay, but they're really working together. Okay, so no, the serpent represents DNA. The caduceus staff, you've seen it on the side of the ambulance, right? Because when we look at the old pictures of the devil, right, what do we see? Anybody remember how they look? The horns, right, which represented Capricorn. That was really Baphomet. And we had the red suit, which represented the root chakra, right? Our desires, but also our what? The root chakra connects you to your material and physical reality, right? Satan. And then, but we had a tail, right? And the tail always had this head on it. Sometimes it was a triangle. Which way was the head of Satan's tail always pointed? Down. You gotta look at the old images. You're gonna see it. It's always pointed down, saying that I'm functioning from my lower nature. But Satan doesn't want to function from that nature. He wants it to point up, representing, now I'm coming back up to the crown chakra. In Hindi culture, we call this the meeting of Shiva and Shakti. Okay? In Nigerian culture, we call this when Eshu joins with Obatala. Okay? So the tail points down, but we want it to come up because we're talking about, because the tail actually, it's really a snake's head. That's what the tail represents. It's a snake's head. Okay? And when the snake is down here, we're dealing with our lower meridian. Okay? In Egypt, we had a statue that signified this. Anybody know which one? It's a popular one. Sphinx. I thought you. The Sphinx. That's the Greek term. The original name of the Sphinx was the Nebhu. Nebhu, short for Nebhuru. Who was Heru? We figured this out earlier. The Christ, the pioneer. Heru is also who you call Horus, signified by the hawk. Right? The redeemer of his father. Jesus redeems his father. In Egyptian mythology, Horus redeems his father Osiris, who was killed by his uncle Set, where we get the term Satan.
The number will be.
See, they were actually all related. So now what happens is the pineal, right? That's what we're speaking about. We're speaking about that. Now we have the Sphinx, and it was the body of what? What was on the bottom? A lion. So that was the animal nature, the lower nature. What was the head? Man. Right. They keep changing, right? It does, which is significant. So the Sphinx or the Nebhu, so the Sphinx represented your God nature, which is the man nature, controlling the animal nature. When we call it Sphinx, we don't get all that information. It's a problem when we change the words around, you know? Okay. So again, that is what we're dealing with, self-actualization. Self-actualization in Yoruba thought, West African thought, is Olodumare perfecting itself. You are Olodumare. You are all products of the serpent's womb. Why? Because you are all products of DNA, of genetics. And we found out some years ago that DNA is not static, right? That it's dynamic. It actually changes. Wow, well, we knew this in Nigeria 1 million years ago. Okay? And we found out something real, in closing, which is important. What stops it from changing? Anybody ever read about that experiment? Okay, real quick. What stops DNA from changing is fear. They found when they exposed subjects to fear, what would happen is that the molecules, DNA molecules, would get very stiff. And when they exposed it to a welcoming, warm, loving environment, they got very soft and buoyant. Now that's all they said in the report, but because we're coming from this perspective and I read it with this eye, I said, oh, so fear is death. Because when you're frozen and stiff, you can't take on new information. When you're soft and young, right? Not physically young. You're young, you're like baby Jesus. You're silent to the world. That's what baby Jesus represents. Silence to the world, no judgment. Then you can take on new things and evolve and live out and fulfill your life purpose, or answer God's question. Orisha. Ori means head, Sha means to select. So an Orisha or an angel is just one of your selected consciousness. That's it. What do I need for the moment? Right now, what I needed for the moment was Shango, who breathes fire from his mouth. When I'm done, I'll go back to something else. You see? You got to know what to choose for the moment. My body is. But this is controlling the body. So I don't get trapped by that designation of the shy guy who doesn't like to talk to people. Because if I did, I wouldn't be able to fulfill my life purpose as a teacher. Everybody got that? The middle of the Sphinx? I didn't touch on the riddle of the Sphinx. There are several riddles of the Sphinx. One of them is the kingdom of heaven is inside of you, and whoever shall seek it shall find it. But there's several that were inscribed on it. Yeah. We can get into it. Thank you. You're welcome.